Hello, this is Coding Gicha for full-stack developers. If you don't apply a certificate when serving a web application, a security warning will appear. This time I'll explain how to apply a certificate to an NGINX web server. Serving web applications with TLS security certificates has become essential these days. To apply a certificate and test it in a development environment, just like on a production server, I recommend using mkcert. Download mkcert to the /usr/local/bin directory, which has a predefined path. Grant executable permissions. You'll also need to install the security tools, a bundle of libraries used internally by mkcert. To ensure that browsers recognize the certificates issued by mkcert for localhost as root-signed certificates, you need to run the mkcert install. You can create the certificates anywhere, but if you create them on a production server using Let's Encrypt, setting the path will allow you to easily convert the development environment configuration files to the production environment configuration files. Since the working directory for Let's Encrypt is /etc/Let's Encrypt, I'll create the /etc/mkcert directory. Grant user account permissions and navigate directly to that directory. Let's Encrypt creates certificates in the archive/domain directory, but the symbolic link files in the live/domain directory are actually used as the certificates. I'll issue certificates using mkcert. mkcert can also issue certificates for wildcard domains. Since the validity period is 2 years and 3 months, it can be used almost continuously without any renewal. When issuing certificates, you can set the name of the generated certificates using the key file and cert file options. I'll delete the generated certificates. I'll create a new one, matching the certificate names from Let's Encrypt. The final generated files will be 2 PEM files. However, if you don't specify a chain.pem file with a root authority signature, some browsers may not trust the public key certificate. Therefore, it's recommended to use fullchain.pem instead of cert.pem for the public key when registering the certificate. A fullchain.pem file contains both cert.pem and chain.pem files. Since certificates issued with mkcert are installed locally as root-authorized certificates, mkcert doesn't require the chain.pem. However, when applying to a production server, you may encounter the tedious task of changing the settings for the fullchain.pem file. The path to the CA root certificate can be determined using the CA root option. Let's copy the root ca.pem file. Since the path is rather long, I'll use command substitution to replace the result of the previous command. I'll match the file name with the Let's Encrypt file. I'll merge cert.pem and chain.pem files to create the fullchain.pem file. A total of 4 PEM files are created. These file names are identical to the Let's Encrypt certificate files. Let's open the configuration file for the gurum.gicha.org site. Requests to port 80 will be forwarded to Secure Protocol 443, so let's copy and paste the first 5 lines. Let's paste the 5 lines I copied. Requests to port 80 using the HTTP protocol will be redirected to the HTTPS protocol. Let's configure the Secure Protocol 443. While encryption using Secure Protocol 443 is said to enhance security, it comes at a cost. The packet size transmitted and received will inevitably increase compared to before encryption, resulting in slower speeds. To secure this, you need to implement HTTP/2. HTTP/2 reduces latency by transmitting packets in parallel, removing duplicate headers, and compressing them. It also handles stream prioritization for parallel transmission. Therefore, if you use the Secure Protocol HTTPS, you must implement HTTP/2 to prevent performance degradation. The HTTP/3 standard was adopted in 2022, and NGINX supports HTTP/3 starting with version 1.25. However, if you install NGINX using the repository provided by Ubuntu 24.04 LTS, NGINX 1.24 is installed. To install the latest version of NGINX, you must register an additional repository. However, if you install using the repository provided by NGINX, the structure of the NGINX configuration directory will be slightly different. The main change in HTTP/3 is its ability to maintain connections even when the Internet IP address changes. Therefore, for general services other than video services, there may not be a significant difference compared to HTTP/2. I will configure the public key certificate as SSL certificate. I will configure the private key certificate as SSL certificate key. As mentioned earlier, I will change cert.pem to fullchain.pem to configure the chain.pem file with the root authority signature. I will reload NGINX. Let's refresh the site. The "not secure" message has disappeared. The "connection is secure" message appears. You can see that the certificate has been successfully applied. I've configured the LEM stack without MariaDB. MariaDB doesn't have coupling, you only need to install a module for connecting to MariaDB from PHP. I'll explain how to save and retrieve data through a database while installing the MariaDB and MySQL modules. Next time, I'll explain how to add the repository provided by NGINX, install the latest version of NGINX, apply TLS certificates, and enable HTTP/3. I'll also explain how to configure the NGINX configuration directory structure to match the one used when installing from the Ubuntu repository. Thank you for watching.